Hey, everybody. Welcome to FL Teams Live. I am Jeff Macolino. With me is Jeremiah Hensley. Isaac Edelman had homework, so he cannot join us. But, hey, we're already done with 8 weeks of the NFL season.
Amazing. Isn't it a little odd, though, that we can no longer have a halfway point of the season?
It is, because I was debating, well, should we do the midpoint now? Most teams have played 8 games, but technically that's not even the midpoint.
Right. Is week 9 the midpoint?
Probably.
I don't know, but either way.
Probably. We can review it again next week. Why not?
No. I think we're at a good point to go back and look at what we thought we knew and what we really know.
Yeah. So I've been thinking this since early on in the season of like, oh, I wish I had that one back. Before the season, of course, Isaac Edelman, Jeremiah, and myself all got on here. We predicted the playoff teams. We predicted the Super Bowl. We've also been picking games against each other. I'll give you an update on that as well, because, again, the loser is going to be punished. And spoiler alert, I'm not going to be punished. Anyways, so let's talk about our predictions. So I want to start with the unanimous ones that we all had unanimously picked. We all picked, we're going to go to the AFC North here. We all picked the Cincinnati Bengals, who are technically in last place right now, but at 4-3, they're tied for second also. Yeah. We all picked the Bengals to win the AFC North. They're a game and a half behind Baltimore, who, by the way, only you. Oh, no, I had Baltimore in the playoffs as well. So Isaac didn't have Baltimore in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Isaac would like to have that one back. Other unanimous picks, we all picked Jacksonville in the AFC South. We're all looking pretty right with that one. We all picked Kansas City to win the AFC West. All looking pretty good there, too. Wild card teams, we had 2 unanimous wild card teams. And then we did have you didn't even have the Bills making the playoffs. I forgot about that. We'll get to that. But the 2 unanimous teams we all picked were the Jets and the Chargers in the AFC to be wild card teams.
We get Isaac, a mulligan on the Jets.
Well,
week 1, Aaron Rodgers.
The Jets are 4-3. They're not out of it. No. And technically neither are the Chargers. These conferences are kind of top heavy, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, this is again, it's been a really weird first half, and we'll touch on that. In my small, quick Dolphin rant, I was talking to a fellow Dolphin fan, and we're handling the criticism of Miami hasn't beaten anybody, right? But in this year's NFL, more than almost any that I can remember in recent memory, a win is a win. Any team can legitimately play with any team on a Sunday. I mean, Denver just beat Kansas City. The Jets beat the Eagles. Anyway.
Well, and it shows you too. The Broncos are a good example of a team that, what they show one week might be completely different a month later, especially when you're talking new coaches, things like that. It was popular for people to jump on the bashing Sean Payton, especially after the 70-point game. Looks like he's doing pretty good job on a horrible dumpster fire that he took over. To have them at 3-5, who would have predicted them to be better than that at this point in the season?
Easily could have been 4-4. There were a couple games in there that one of those should have swung.
Well, and look, if they got to play their schedule all over again, they'd probably come out 5-3 or something. With they still have the Raiders on the schedule. The Raiders became the first team to fire not only just their head coach, they fired their offensive coordinator and their GM for good measure. It's hard to actually remember. Josh McDaniels took over a playoff team in the Raiders, added Devontae Adams, and somehow got substantially worse.
And didn't Josh McDaniels do something very similar in Denver? when he took over in Denver, they were a solid team. And McDaniels, I think this has to be the end of the McDaniels experience. Like this experiment, it's got to be done.
Yeah, he can go back with Belichick, or I'm sure he'll find a job somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not the head guy in a building.
He'll go the way of Bill O'Brien. You're a good
Right.
coordinator, go be it.
Right. Or Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah.
You know, but he's never going to get another head coaching job the rest of his life. Nor should he. So yeah, interesting stuff.
So there's our unanimous. AFC. Where were we bad?
Really, on our unanimous picks, I would say in the AFC, not bad. The Bengals, you know, they started rough because Joe Burrow's injury, and I think a lot of people overlooked how mobile Joe Burrow is and how much a calf injury can really affect his play. They put a drumming on San Francisco. Not that they've been anything great home about the past few weeks, but I picked, I guess we'll touch on this. Actually, Jeremiah, you picked the Bengals to win the Super Bowl over the Eagles. I picked them to lose the Super Bowl. So we both had Cincinnati in the AFC, winning the AFC. Isaac had the Chargers. He probably would like that one back.
Yeah, that one.
But I'll ask you this, and we'll make our prediction, so you don't need to spoil it for the end. But do you regret picking Cincinnati to win the AFC? And do you feel bad? Would you? No. Again, you'll have the opportunity to change your pick,
right?
But would you?
Maybe, but probably not. I mean, Cincinnati, this is kind of what I thought it would be. They're a slow starting team. And as the season goes on, they get stronger and stronger. And they've shown this the past couple of years. And I think they're one of the most talented teams. Of course, I mean, the way they handled San Francisco says a lot. And I mean, San Francisco's sliding a little bit, but even still, the healthier Burrow's getting, the healthier receiving core's getting, the defense is making plays. I don't feel bad about it. I think it's still a very real possibility, probably the highest percentile.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm standing by my prediction of them in the. I do think their game against Buffalo. There's some heavyweight battles coming up on Sunday. Mm-hmm. 3 big heavyweight battles coming up. One in early morning, one involving the Dolphins and Chiefs, but also the Bills and Bengals, which I think is the Sunday night game. Good God, that's going to be a long day.
Yeah, it is.
But those 2 games are going to shape a lot of what I think. And again, we're overlooking the Ravens, who are, I believe, I mean, they'd at least be tied for the number 1 seed. I think the 4 division winners are all 6 and leaders are all 6-2 right now. Isaac, of course, didn't even pick them to make the playoffs. You didn't pick the Bills to make the playoffs. My bad. Looking at our 7 teams, my bad is the Dolphins. I left the Dolphins out. So if I could swap the Dolphins and the Chargers, you're talking about, changing one of your preseason predictions. Mm-hmm. Throw the Dolphins in. I still think as a wild card, not the division winner. Throw them in over the Chargers. I know Isaac would probably want to throw Baltimore in. You also have the Chargers. My guess, you tell me, would be you might want to swap the Chargers and the Bills.
Yeah, that would be my swap. I mean, I especially thought, again, that the Jets would be better. And I think I hinged my entire Buffalo getting bounced out on that and the Chargers. But yeah, that would be my swap. I would get the Bills in the playoffs and absolutely knock out the Chargers. I mean, that AFC West from 2 years ago when we just thought it was going to be the most competitive, unbelievable division. Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Herbert. It's going to be unbelievable. It hasn't been at all. You know?
No, it's been a mess. I mean, aside from obviously the Chiefs and the Chargers last year, but boy, talk about needing a new coach. We could touch on that another day because I doubt that would change. Okay,
so
let's
NFC.
The NFC. We also had 3 unanimous division winners. The Lions in the NFC North looks good.
Feels good.
The Saints in the NFC South, I think, still looks good. They're tied for first place right now, and it looks like they're. I think certainly people, if you look at their roster compared to the Falcons and the Bucks, I think it's not much of a comparison. It's whether they can coach the team. And San Francisco in the NFC West, which was looking great until the last few weeks. Seattle is now in first place at 5-2, just a half game over San Francisco. We were not unanimous. You and I both picked Philly to win the NFC East. Isaac picked the Cowboys. Those two teams play each other. So
it's a big weekend.
Yeah, and they're 5-2. The Eagles are 7-1. A win, and they're a half game out. So I mean, it's not crazy at this point. We were all unanimous that Dallas would make the playoffs, which that's looking good. You were the only one. This is where you can fly your flag, but I'm going to chop it right down.
Yeah.
You were the only one who had the Seahawks in the playoffs, looking good. You also, of course, had the Bears in the playoffs.
Oh, that one hurts.
Yeah. Isaac had the Giants and Vikings. And, of course, he had the Eagles in as a wild card. Not looking great there, especially with Kirk Cousins. Actually, if Cousins' Achilles wasn't destroyed last week, I think the Vikings looked to be a playoff team, probably.
Yeah.
I had my wild cards were Dallas, of course, and the Giants, and my biggest regret, I made it the day of the show, the Packers.
Yeah.
I had the Vikings penciled in there. Not that that's much better. Ugh, the Packers, Jordan Love. They've got to be looking. I would assume they got to be looking for a quarterback this offseason, right?
They have to be. And I mean, but Green Bay also came out of the gate with a lot of injuries. Aaron Jones is such a big part of that offense. And when Aaron Jones has missed he can't stay on the field. And AJ Dillon's a good back, but he's not the versatile threat that it is. Yeah. And then you play without Christian Watson for a couple of weeks. Musgrave keeps getting banged up. There's a lot of problems on that side.
Bakhtiari,
but we kind of saw that coming a little bit, right? I mean, with Green Bay, Jordan Love's shown flashes, but you're not sold there. Can't be.
No.
And I think it's interesting. The team, I love that I got Seattle up there because I think Seattle's tough all the way around. Kenneth Walker makes a big difference there. And now Jackson Smith Enigma coming on. But I think San Francisco's 3-game losing streak is greatly overhyped, especially after the trade deadline. I still feel pretty good about who they are. And, you add Chase Young to that group. That's scary.
I got to tell you, the NFC is, first off, our predictions, for the most part, were solid. I mean, the top 5 teams, Eagles, Lions, 49ers, Cowboys, and let's say the Saints, all look good for to make the playoffs. You got the Seahawks, of course. Isaac and I think, kind of flubbed on our 2 other wild cards. I tell you what, you want a hot take. I think the number 2 team in the NFC South might end up making the playoffs. They might get 2 teams in the playoffs because there's not good teams. I mean, it's
if all they got to do is beat out Minnesota or Green Bay, which is what it's looking like it's going to have to be.
Yeah, Washington's dismantling. They're 3-5.
Yeah.
The Vikings, I can't assume that this kid who's coming in to play is going to be anything.
So, just for a small moment, like I've said it before on these shows, I love sports because of the stories and the moments. And Josh Dobbs has been such an incredible story for this season. Out of nowhere, not expected, literally signed days before the regular season, comes in with Arizona, keeps them competitive. And then when they get to the point of Kyler Murray getting ready to come back, it just so happens Kirk Cousins goes down, and now Dobbs is over to Minnesota. And I want the guy to do well. I hope he does. He's got weapons. Well, but then you're missing Justin Jefferson, which really hurts. But Dobbs is a great story. Dobbs is a great story, man. And it's cool to see that. And I really like what I've seen out of the kid in Chicago too. Teabag. Tyler Baggett.
Yeah.
Right. But so I love
Bagent.
those stories. Yeah.
It's I have a feeling, and obviously his first game going against the Raiders, it was like, oh my God, how did this guy go undrafted and the Chargers? And I have a feeling the Saints defense might do some things that make him look like a Division II quarterback. Just a hunch this week. I don't think Justin Fields is going to lose his job to Bagent, but
no.
Who that we could talk about the Bears another time. I mean, they're going to have 2 high first round draft picks. I mean, so there's that. So are the Cardinals, I think, right? They got the Texans in their own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a couple teams not good, but they've got some draft capital for sure.
The NFL shows us every year, including this one, that the turnaround can be relatively quick, man. If you're building underneath it, I mean, in a snap, you can become competitive with the right draft picks. Jacksonville is a great example of that. I mean, once they exercise the right coaching and exercise that Urban Meyer demon, get the right guys in place, and all of a sudden your team. And Detroit, when you really look at it, I mean, Dan Campbell, again, the coach that fits them, but they're draft picks. I mean, from Aiden Hutchinson, like the hell that guy is creating every week. You see what Jamar Gibbs did when he got the ball to carry all the way through. Even back to drafting St. Brown, right? Getting Amon-Ra, the corner. I mean, Penei Sewell. Like if you hit when you're early, you can become competitive super quick. And if you flub that, you can forever be the Commanders.
Yeah, and plugging in the right veterans in with those draft picks.
100%.
Jared Goff, Alex Anzalone.
Yep.
They're not stars, but they're playing well and they fit their system and they're good leaders. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. Speaking of Detroit, Isaac had them representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. He had the Chargers over the Lions. Didn't get Isaac's revamped Super Bowl prediction before the show. I probably should have. The Lions look okay. I don't know that they're necessarily a Super Bowl team, but you know they're going to be a factor in the playoffs almost certainly. You had Cincinnati beating the Eagles. I'm not changing my pick, but I had the Saints over the Bengals, which before Sunday looked really, really bad. Now it's like, okay, I can see some things. I also made that pick on this day of the show. I changed my pick because you and Isaac picked the Dolphins to win the AFC East. So I'm like, oh, we're being homers here. I'm gonna be a homer too. So those were our preseason predictions. So Jeremiah, right now, about halfway through the season, if you have to pick 2 teams in each conference to play in the championship game, and then repick your Super Bowl pick, Cincy over Philly is not a bad one, by the way. Looks possible. Tell me your AFC Championship, NFC Championship, and then Super Bowl with what we've seen for 8 weeks.
I fight it so hard to not go homer. But in the AFC Championship, I'm still going to keep Cincinnati there. But I think Cincinnati, Miami in the AFC Championship game. And in the NFC, I'm going to stay, probably it's what I had going into this, but Philly and San Francisco. I just think they're the 2 most complete, well-coached teams. Now, the wild card is if Detroit was somehow able to get home field in the playoffs, they're a different team at Ford Field. Jared Goff is a different quarterback in that dome. If they had a home field, I think Detroit could make some noise, but I think it's still Eagles, 49ers. And I'm going to say the 49ers get this win, and maybe it's because of the trade deadline and I got hyped up over it, but I think adding Chase Young to that defense and, you know, what other teams can go through a 3-game losing streak and still hold on to almost a part of their division lead, and also going through injuries with Deebo Samuel. You know, I just think San Francisco is a team that defensively got better, and their offense is going to continue to grow. There's questions now regarding Brock Purdy, though. I think there's
a lot, yeah,
a lot. But I'm going to go with San Francisco over Philadelphia, getting the Super Bowl. And I don't want to do it, man. And I'm going to tell you flat out, I'm buying the high of last week. And it wasn't because it was an impressive victory. It was because I saw the difference that Jalen Ramsey made. Jalen Ramsey changed that game single-handedly. He caused a fumble, the interception where he baited Mac Jones into it. But more importantly, when you go back and look at the game film, Mac Jones only went to Jalen Ramsey's side like 4 times the entire game, and one of those ends up picked. This was playing without Xavier Howard, without Javon Holland. The last 2 games, Bradley Chubb has looked like the guy we thought we traded for. Bradley Chubb's getting pressure on the quarterback. As the defense gets healthier, Achane should be coming back within a little bit. Jeff Wilson's look good. And I trust that Mike McDaniel over this bye will go back to the games where the offense was stopped and scheme around that. Because there is a blueprint to beat Miami. Buffalo did it. Philly did it. You got to get Tua off schedule. You got to get them off time. You got to get them in 2nd and 15. You got to get them in 3rd and 9s. You've got to back them off and kill that timing. But I think McDaniel's a smart enough playmaker or play caller that he can adjust for that. So I'm going to put Miami in the Super Bowl versus San Francisco, the Josh McDaniel Bowl or Mike McDaniel Bowl. Geez, Josh just got fired and he's on my head. The Mike McDaniel Bowl, man. That's where I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, Super Bowl 19. Was that when they played each other?
Yeah. Hey, the 1 year that Danny Boy made the Super Bowl. It's like the curse of the Dolphins, really. And to exercise that demon, you got to beat the guy who did it. I mean, think about it. Marino, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. His only Super Bowl appearance is against a full strength in their prime, Joe Montana-led San Francisco 49ers team.
Yeah. So who's winning?
I'm going to say, God, it's the kiss of death, but I'm going to go with Miami.
All right.
Jeff, and I feel the need to back it up, and I'm letting you go on that. Here's the deal. Playmakers, man. I mean, there hasn't been an offense this explosive that can make plays since the greatest show on turf with the Rams. Hasn't been.
2011 Saints.
Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, the difference that they can make, Mostert, Achane, they can get back quick. And to have that explosive ability, and I still have faith that Fangio at a full strength defense will get it together. Complete homer, but there we go.
Yeah, I mean, a guy wearing Dolphins gear,
all geared up. Dolphins.
I know. I'm going to be boring. I'm going to say AFC. I think this would be the 3rd year in a row. I'm going to say it's Cincinnati and Kansas City. I think the refs have tried their hardest to keep Kansas City winning. I don't think a certain somebody dating a certain somebody is going to make the league not want that person to get to the Super Bowl. But I'm going to say the Bengals because that's what part of me is like, I'm just going to stand here and fight for my preseason prediction. The Bengals are a team that does not care who they're playing. They do not care where they're playing. I like Joe Burrow. I like the whole organization right now. We'll see. I might look foolish if this was just this is where the Bengals peak right here. But I'm going to stick with my horse I had, before the year. The NFC, you got to have Philly in the championship game.
Yeah.
My struggle is trying to figure out a team that can actually go to Philly, which is probably going to be the case. There's a chance Detroit finagles home field advantage. They've got
a much easier schedule.
Right? Yeah. Who the Eagles play is I don't know. I feel like Detroit's still a little bit away. Just a year. They need the playoff experience kind of thing.
Sure.
I could see them being one and done, and that's not an indictment on Dan Campbell or Detroit or anything else. San Francisco, I'm not a Brock Purdy believer. I've he was a fun story, and Isaac and you and my son love Brock Purdy, and I'm like, he's a 7th round, 2nd-year quarterback, and he sometimes looks like it. He's surrounded by tremendous skill players.
It's system based.
Yeah, it's very system based. Shanahan's a genius. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I don't buy Seattle. I still just don't buy the whole Geno Smith thing, and I'm probably the guy who's always said, I think Geno could start somewhere. And now he is. And I'm like, but he's Geno Smith. He can't lead a team to the Super Bowl, let alone win road playoff games.
Yeah.
Seattle, you mentioned Detroit. If Seattle somehow ends up with home field, that's another place that can swing things. So because I'm a homer and this was my preseason pick, I'm going to say the Eagles do play the Saints in the NFC Championship game. I'm going to right now say the Eagles win that game. And how much
that one hurts you. That stings.
But I do think you talk about playmakers. The Saints offense has weapons, a diverse group of weapons that if they figure it out, there's going to be trouble just playing them because they are a top 5 defense. They've got, Chris Olave, who's been in his own head. Rashid Shaheed, 2nd fastest guy in the NFL to Tyreek Hill. The only 2 players who average more than 15 miles an hour in the NFL, Tyreek Hill and Rashid Shaheed. Michael Thomas looked good. They haven't really forced the ball to him much, but he's on pace for almost 1,000 yards quietly. Alvin Kamara's looked like he turned the time machine back. Taysom Hill might be the best football player to ever step on the field. Just not as far as like a Hall of Fame. Just nobody could play football better than Taysom Hill.
No, he threw a touch? No, he
had a 44-yard pass. He had a 62 yards running and 2 touchdowns, and he had a big 3rd down or 1st down catch for 14 yards. So he's diverse. But that all being said, right now the Eagles have shown more. I don't know that they've barely squeaking by Washington twice. Their most convincing win, frankly, was, I'm sure I'm forgetting one, was the Miami game.
Sure.
I don't think they've looked great. I don't think they look as good as they looked last season. However, I just don't see another team in the NFC right now who I can confidently say would go toe-to-toe with them. I do think the Saints, oddly, may be the best matchup for them. Just because they're the Saints' run defense versus the Eagles' run offense is an interesting matchup. It's kind of power against power to an extent. But also, I think Jalen Hurts in this hypothetical matchup makes the difference with his legs, just how mobile he is, and that can give the Saints defense some fits. So I'm going to change my prediction to the Bengals winning the Super Bowl over the Philadelphia Eagles. So at least I can put that feather in my cap. I feel a little less dirty, but
I feel filthy right now. But I'll tell you this, man. I was there Sunday night in the Dolphins and the Eagles game. And if you looked at the box score, you look at the outside, it looked pretty ugly. But I'm going to tell you from being there for every snap, it wasn't that far away. It wasn't that far away. Tyreek dropped a touchdown pass. Had he held on to that. Plus, me, Jeff, through all the shows we do, I really do try to venture away from bitching. But no penalties. I mean, Philly didn't get a single flag on anything that happened all night. And, Jalen Hurts, to me, is the wild card. He can run it, but I don't know how much I trust him in big games. And, I think they've got a great offense that's built around him. And also the running game can come and go. DeAndre Swift has looked okay, but Gainwell has dropped back. And, I think where I go with San Francisco is Christian McCaffrey, if he stays healthy, I think is one of the best all-around football players in the National Football League. Christian McCaffrey running the ball at his size and catching the ball the way that he does is amazing. Brandon Ayuk stepped into his own. Kittle's been quiet. Deebo Samuel's been banged up. And then them getting better on defense. They added Chase Young to that defensive line. And I think that's a big difference maker.
Yeah. Well, last thing we have to touch on. We have been making picks, and let's just say it hasn't really been close, unless you include James, my son, my 10-year-old son, who makes picks with us. He and I are tied on top right now. With
coincidence, complete coincidence.
Well, you can.
It wasn't the exact same games. No,
Well, we picked different games. I mean, we just, one of us is right and the other one, we've been equal amounts right and wrong. Jeremiah is currently pulling up the caboose. 15 games right now behind. That's a lot of games to make up, but you do have.
I'm a closer.
You do have time, and Isaac, 12 behind me, 3 ahead of you. You two look like you'll be battling to see who avoids being punished for finishing last in our picks league. Yeah,
that's not looking good. So to save a tiny bit of face for me here, can we at least rewind to about 3 weeks ago when we were making predictions, you and I said it was about time to give that Will Levis kid a chance?
There you go. See, look,
I don't think Ryan Tannehill sees the field again this year.
Yeah.
Don't think it happens.
He shouldn't.
No.
I mean, we'll see how Levis does. Tomorrow night's actually very interesting. I want to see how he matches up with the Steelers, because it just that seems like a matchup that could cause some problems. I don't even. Do we know who's starting for Pittsburgh at quarterback?
I think Trubisky.
Oof, that might be an ugly game. That has potential to be a very ugly game.
But I think if you're Tennessee at this point, when you saw what you saw last week, I think you have to have a little bit of faith and let Levis take some lumps. I mean, because Tannehill's not going to be what puts you over the edge to make the playoffs.
And you're not making the playoffs anyways.
Right. So that's that point. I think, and for your Saints, I'll tell you, as much as I try to tune in and watch them, more so for you and knowing that we're going to talk about it, there's so much talent. If you had a guy calling plays like a Mike McDaniel, because yes, we're blessed with talent, but when you really watch the way that he puts people in motion and creates mismatches, then the number of plays that are ran from the same formation with the same motion, there's just no confusion when you get inside the 20 with the Saints. There's none. You just man up. And if you utilize the talent that you have, and they did a little bit last week, Taysom got more involved inside the red zone.
Yeah.
But a more talented play caller would make all the difference in New Orleans.
Yeah, just modernizing the offense. Their rate of motion was the worst in the league by far, the lowest in the league by far. I think they've actually been bullied the last 2 weeks from the New Orleans media. I think has basically bullied them to put motion into the play. It's kind of wild in Saints land, but that's a whole other rabbit hole we don't need to dive down here. Make sure you're subscribed to FL Teams. And pop in the comments and tell us why we're idiots. This is another one of those shows that at the end of the year, Isaac should be able to chop up and show, how dumb we are or how smart we are.
I'm usually the most pessimistic Dolphins fan, and I hate myself for doing it, but I'm trying to convince myself of the hype at this point.
Yeah,
hopefully it's not going to bite me in the ass.
We went different ways on the Homer wagon in this in this episode. All right, folks, make sure you're subscribed. For Jeremiah Hensley, I'm Jeff Macolino. We'll see you next week.